Hello friends, trying to survive by eating instant noodle every day here, bringing you another starrail video, in which I'm going to tell you on how to build Pela in this complete guide to Pela. She is an ice type debuffing support belonging to the Nihility path, with excellent enemy defense reduction and team utility. As one of the sources of def reduction and team-wide effect hit rate buffs, Pela is difficult to replace and always useful. Curing her requires minimal effort, and her skill point generation is amongst the highest in the game. With her universal effects and ease of use, Pela can effortlessly find a place in any team with an open slot. Pela is a powerful and flexible debuffer that specializes in reducing enemy defense, an effect often known as depth threat, and generating a large amount of skill points for the team. She can also dispel enemy buffs. Almost no other support characters have the flexibility to basic attack as much as Pela does, and when combined with a high speed stat and a lack of demand for other stats, these factors make her one of the most SP positive characters in the game. Pela's depth threat being universally applicable and enemy centered allows for a wide variety of characters to synergize with her, to the point that there are virtually no noticeable downsides other than using up a team slot for her. Let's start with her basic attack. Frost Shot. Deal 50 up to 110% of Pela's attack to a single enemy. This is just a standard attack scaling basic attack. Her skill, Frostbite, removes one buff and deals ice damage equal to 105 up to 231% of Pela's attack to a single enemy. Buff this spell is rare and very helpful to have, and her skill comes with a relatively high damage multiplier for support-oriented characters. Now, her ultimate, Zone Suppression, deals ice damage equal to 60 up to 108% of Pela's attack to all enemies, with a 100% base chance to inflict exposed to all enemies. When exposed, enemy's defense is reduced by 30% up to 42% for 2 turns. This is the most important part of her kit, and her primary support ability that significantly increases all team damage. For her talent, Data Collecting. If the enemy is debuffed after Pela's attack, Pela will restore 5 up to 11 additional energy. This effect can only be triggered one time per attack. The energy restoration significantly improves her ultimate uptime, but will not trigger if enemies die to her attacks. Lastly, her technique, Preemptive Strike, immediately attacks the enemy. Upon entering battle, Pela deals ice damage equal to 80% of her attack to a random enemy, with a 100% base chance of lowering the defense of all enemies by 20% for 2 turns. This will not trigger her talent unless another debuff is applied, as her technique does damage before applying depth threat. This depth threat can stack with the exposed status from her ultimate. Now, let's talk a bit about her traces. Ascension 2, Pass, deals 20% more damage to debuff enemies. An easy to access improvement to Pela's personal damage, a nice bonus but not essential. Ascension 4, The Secret Strategy. When Pela is on the battlefield, all allies' effect hit rate increases by 10%. This allows both Pela and her team's effect hit rate needs, one of the few sources of effect hit rate buffs in the game. Ascension 6, Wipe Out. Using skill to remove a buff increases the damage of the next attack by 20%. An increase to personal damage, but locked behind removing a buff with her skill. Since Pela will basic attack the majority of the time, she doesn't see much value from this. For Trace's priority, you'd want to go ultimate, talent, basic attack, and then skill. Pela's ultimate is where the majority of her utility comes from, and as such, should be the first priority. Her talent helps her with her ultimate uptime, and therefore should be second priority. However, the talent does not need to be maxed. We will discuss about energy breakpoints later on. As her personal damage is not a priority, her basic attack and skill can be ignored completely when building her. Basic attack takes higher priority in most cases as her default action of choice, but with E4 and an ice type damage dealer, her skill priority can rise. Now, for her Eidolons. Eidolon 1. When an enemy is defeated, Pela regenerates 5 energy It is situationally useful, though the energy recombination generally do not account for this. Eidolon 2. Using skill to remove buff. Increases speed by 10% for 2 turns. The speed boost can be nice to get more action in. However, since it's locked behind a skill usage, the value is limited. Eidolon 3. Skill and basic attack levels contribute to her personal damage, but Pela is primarily a debuff support, so this doesn't provide as much value. Eidolon 4. When skill is used, there is a 100% base chance to reduce the target's enemy's ice resistance by 12% for 2 turns. The ice res reduction adds some additional synergy with ice-type damage dealers like Qingque or Qingque, although having to use Pela's skill and it being single target can be limiting. Eidolon 5 increases her ult and talent level. Ultimates levels are nice as they increase how much defense is reduced. Talents level are useful because they help with the energy regeneration and ultimate uptime. Eidolon 6. When Pela attacks a debuff enemy, she deals additional ice damage equal to 40% of Pela's attack to the enemy, a nice buff to her personal damage, and works well with the debuff applied by her ultimate, as well as her Eidolons for ice res reduction. For Eidolon priority, it is really that simple. If 4 is nice to have but not priority. If you're using her with ice damage dealer and have skill point to spare, you can use her skill to reduce enemy ice res. E5 is her best Eidolon, because it increases her ultimate and talent level by 2. Other Eidolons are just not that good on her. Due to the ease of reaching her required effect hit rate and lack of demand for other stats, Pela finds it very easy to stack high speed and act as many times as possible, as her skill does not have much use outside of dispelling buffs. The default way to use Pela is to use her basic attack, unless an enemy buff needs to be dispelled, or if you'd like to reduce ice rest with her E4 effect. Pela's kit implies that she can be pulled as a damage dealer, having several damage-oriented traces and an Eidolon that increases her basic attack damage. This should not be taken as a hint to build further damage, as a dead Pela cannot debuff enemies, as Pela's primary role is as a support. The importance of substats cannot be understated. It is encouraged to use whatever stats available on your account with more optimal speed and defensive stats. Two-piece combination of Messenger, Woodring, Longavus, and Knight of Purity, Pela is not dependent on any sets to function, and prioritizing her speed and survivability is often preferable than focusing on her damage. It is not recommended to farm any set specifically for Pela herself, but to simply use whatever is available from farming for higher priority units. You can also use 4-piece Musketeer, as it is readily available from Echoes of War, and will be naturally acquired without farming. It makes for an excellent filler set for Pela. The increase in speed from its 4-piece effect is helpful to Pela, but the increases to damage stats are unlikely to have a noticeable impact. There is also 4-piece Squad of Woodring Snow, with little need to prioritize damage output. The set not having offensive bonuses is irrelevant, reducing incoming damage by 8% and receiving an 8% heal when below 50% allows Pela to absorb large amount of damage without the need for external healing. The extra energy while below 50% is occasionally useful, if not using before the tutorial mission starts, but cannot be relied upon to enable 2-turn ultimate rotations. Lastly, the 4-piece Eagle of Twilight set, a highly competitive set for Pela. The more often you use her ultimate, the faster Pela goes, and the more skill point you can generate. The higher Pela speed, the better it gets. It is most recommended when using Superimposition 5 of before the tutorial mission starts Lycon for 2-turn ultimates. For anyone interested in the calculation, when Pela is able to cast her ultimate in 2 turns, these sets offer approximately 14% increase to her effective speed, which falls to 9% with 3 turns ultimate, and further to 6% with 4 turns ultimate. You can multiply her speed with this increase to find her effective speed. For example, 134 speed at 2 turn, 3 turn, and 4 turn rotations respectively would equate to 153, 146, and 142 effective speed. The higher Pela speed, the better the effect. For planar ornaments, The choice between Fleet of the Ageless and Broken Kill should depend on your substats and teammates. Broken Kill is generally Pela's best planner set, as 10% crit damage is usually more impactful than 8% attack. However, this can vary based on your team and the stats your damage dealers have. Fleet of the Ageless, a very competitive alternative to Broken Kill, especially when considering that the HP percent from this set provides more defensive utility than the effect rest from Broken Kill. Reaching the speed threshold for Fleet's set effect is much easier than reaching Broken Kill's effect rest requirement. When in a DoD team, this set becomes their best options. For the main stats, you want effect hit rate on the body if you don't have 60%, but if you do, you can use HP or defense. Speed on boots. For the spear, you can use HP or defense or even anything that has good substats. And lastly, energy regeneration rate on the rope. For substat priority, you want effect hit rate until 67%, and then speed, and then effect resistance, and then any defensive substat. Remember that her Ascension 4 gives 10% effect hit rate, so you should only aim for 57%. Pela has no built-in survivability into her kit, and low base stats due to being a 4-star support. For reference, Susung, a typical hunt damage dealer, has 4 HP or defense boost from traces, an aggro reducing ability from her A2, and a lower aggro stat than Pela. This effectively means that Pela is more fragile than all damage dealers in the game, and survivability must be built for her. When you are using Broken Kill, increasing Pela's effect rest to 30% should be prioritized above other tank stats. And there is also DPS Pela. Let's not talk about that. For Pela icons of choice, there's only 2. Before the tutorial mission starts, aka tutorial, and resolution signs as bursts of sweat, aka resolution. Tutorial is a strong competitor for Pela's best icon. Just like on Silverwolf, this icon has excellent synergy with Pela. It helps with reaching her effect hit rate goal, which allows for greater focus on defensive stats on her relics. Furthermore, this icon enables quicker ultimate rotation. We will discuss energy breakpoints later on. Now let's talk about resolution. Although this icon is inconsistent at lower imposition due to the low base chance of the ensnare debuff and low defense reductions, it becomes an excellent option at super imposition 3 or higher. Pela can easily proc it due to her high speed, AoE ultimate, and 2-hit basic attack, and the defense reduction stacks with her own defense threat. The additional depth threat bridges gaps when Pela's ultimate is down, which is helpful with talent uptime. So just try to pull for resolution. With any icon and a level 15 energy regeneration rope, Pela can use her ultimate in just 3 basic. You need to proc talent 4 times if you have level 5 talent, and you just need to proc talent 3 times if you have level 9 talent. To proc talent 4 times, you need an external debuff or high speed to keep the talent uptime. With no energy regeneration rope, you need to do 4 basic attacks, which is just not optimal. With the tutorial icon at super imposition 5 and level 15 energy regeneration rope, you can just do 2 basic attack to get her ult, but you need to have her talent at level 7. You can also use her ultimate in just 3 basic attack without energy regeneration rope, but why would you not use energy regeneration rope on her? There is also a trick to ult on first memory of Chaos turn. You need to use tutorial icon at super imposition 5, level 15 energy regeneration rope, 1 technique, and 1 skill. Any basic attack and talent proc can be replaced with 1 use of her skill. For example, Pela can get her ultimate back with 3 talent procs, 2 basic attacks, and a skill. Pela and Silverwolf both share a niche as debuffers that reduce enemy defense with universally useful effects and strong SP positivity. Silverwolf's weakness implant allows her to enable unique team compositions and less content optimal damage dealers at the cost of taking slightly more SP than Pela. Silverwolf's defense reduction is greater and lasts a turn longer, but a single target, unlike Pela's AoE effect. This makes Pela more prone to losing uptime on the debuff against incredibly fast enemies, especially when she does not have the tutorial icon. Pela's access to this spell can also be crucial against certain content and must be taken into consideration. Although running both Silverwolf and Pela is not as optimal as running a Harmony support instead of one, it is not a bad idea. Due to her depth strat being universally useful and her SP positivity, Pela works with all damage dealers. However, there are some types of unit that benefit more than others. For example, damage dealers using 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars. Depth strat becomes more potent in larger quantities and is also additive with the Genius set Death Ignore. This set increases Pela's value when paired with damage dealers that can use 4-piece Genius, which is essentially all of them. Qingque. Pela's A4 gives Qingque the perfect amount of effect hit rate to fulfill her requirement without any additional effect hit rate substats. Her debuff synergizes well with Qingque's DOT damage, as Death Threat is one of the few effects that can help both break and DOT damage. SP hungry units. Pela is true SP positive, which makes her especially useful on teams with units who consume a large amount of SP, like Daniel, Qingque, or even Zilla. 4-piece Eagle of Twilight line combined with the tutorial icon on Pela will allow her to generate extra SP in this case. Multi-target damage dealers. Pela's ultimate applies to all enemies, which has excellent synergy with AoE characters such as Qingyun, Blade, Qingliu, Qingque, Herta, and Himiko. This is especially compared to single target debuffers like Luka or Silverwolf. Pela has no downside. Her debuff is universal, and her SP positive playstyle means that she can easily fit into any team if a spot is available. You can go standard Hypercarry team, which is damage dealer, Pela, flex, and sustain, something like Qingque, Pela, Tingyun, and Lynx. As Pela can fit into most teams as debuffer, a Hypercarry team format is an excellent choice for her. You can also run double DPS team, which is damage dealer, Pela, and a sustain. Example would be Blade, Qingliu, Pela, and Luocha. Pela can benefit teams with multiple damage dealers due to how her debuffs affect all damage. This can be especially helpful if the two damage dealers have different scaling, such as attack scaling and break effect scaling. If you use Yellow Daniel, you can try Imbibitor Lunay, Tingyun, Pela, and a sustain. Pela is a great SP generator, allowing Daniel to spam his triple enhanced basic attack more often. Additionally, Pela applies AoE depth threat, which aligns with Daniel blast targeting. If you use the green one, you can literally just swap the Daniels. Here, I will show some gameplay on how Pela literally fit in any team and helps them destroy all enemies.
涼しいです。天木不破。情熱変身。困りました。諸悪退散。
My heart rages around like an ocean in my head because there are so many things that I left unsaid.
一心同期。そうよ一体。客をもてなします。捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。砲丸を持って出るべし。 や、捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。
My heart rages around like an ocean in my
世の万物
head.
インジナス輪を持って淘汰した占いましょうか勝利。
I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that it's not reality.
まだ立ち上がります。客をもてなしを大事な
I go inside these
全てを照らさん。
passions all
天の珍奇を持って飛ぶが一心同期。 砲丸を月光を剣とす。陰陽転換。輪を持って淘汰した。おや、捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。占いましょう。そうよ一体。人事なす。
I can almost feel you walking
湘南に過ぎない。
distance, but I know that it's not reality.
この月下で全てを照らさん。まだ優勢ではありません。おや、全員砲丸を持って見るべし。立ちなさい。
新しい商品
敵データ収集。捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。まだ立ち上がりますか。消化勝利。落ち着いて。
お客様を裏切れと追加料金です
素晴らしい。さようなら。湘南に過ぎない。裏立ちなさい。
新しいはい
敵データ収集。捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。痛くない。敵ターゲットを確認。まだ立ち上がりますか。落ち着いて。
僕は友情を重んじる
陰陽転換。世の万物印字なす。全員死刑。立ちなさい。砲丸をそうよ一体。
大使者お客様を裏切れと追加料金です
素晴らしい。やさようなら。呼吸するそのまだ立ち上がりますか。落ち着いて。敵データ捕獲マーク起動。愉快な反撃の時間です。不利な
新しい商売です
陰陽転換。あいつで練習する。
So Pela is a good unit overall. Yeah, I think that's it.